Ethan had always been the quiet type. Living on a remote space station on the edge of the galaxy, he didn't have many people to talk to, and he preferred it that way. The station was a strange place, filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes, each going about their own business. The hum of the station's engines and the flashing lights of nearby star systems were the backdrop to his daily life. But it was a life of solitude, one that he had grown used to over the years. Every night, as he lay in his small quarters, Ethan would fall asleep and drift into a strange dream. It wasn't like other dreams he had before. This one was different. Every night, he found himself in a dark, endless field, under a sky that seemed to swirl with colors he had never seen before. In the distance, he could make out a figure. She was tall and beautiful, her skin shimmering with a soft, ethereal glow. Her eyes were the most striking thing about her, large, bright, and filled with an expression he couldn't quite understand. She was always standing there, waiting for him. But whenever he tried to approach her, the dream would slip away, and he would wake up with a feeling of longing. Ethan never understood why these dreams kept coming back. The same woman, the same field, every night. He told himself it was just his mind playing tricks on him, but no matter how hard he tried to shake it off, he couldn't. He had no idea who she was, or why she appeared in his dreams. But the more he dreamed about her, the more he felt like he was somehow connected to her. One day, after a long shift in the station's cargo bay, Ethan found himself wandering through the marketplace. The usual busy noise of the station surrounded him, with vendors shouting their wares, and travelers from distant planets making their way through the crowd. It was a usual day for Ethan, but something felt different this time, as he passed by the food stalls. He noticed a group of aliens gathered around, whispering excitedly about something. Curious, Ethan walked closer to hear what they were saying. But as he did, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. There, standing at the center of the group, was the woman from his dreams. She was just as beautiful as he remembered, her glowing skin and captivating eyes sending a chill down his spine. She stood out in the crowd as if the world around her faded into the background. The sight of her in the flesh made his heart race, and for a moment he thought he might faint. His mind couldn't process what he was seeing. Was this real? Was this woman really standing in front of him? She turned her head and looked directly at him, locking eyes with Ethan. Time seemed to slow down as he stood frozen in place. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, and in that instant, Ethan felt a surge of recognition. He didn't know how or why, but he knew that he had seen her before. And he wasn't the only one who had felt it. The woman took a step toward him, her movements graceful and fluid as though she was gliding through the air. The crowd around them parted, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She came closer and closer until she stood right in front of him, close enough that he could feel her presence. Her scent was like a strange combination of flowers and fresh rain, unlike anything he had ever smelled. "I don't believe it," she said, her voice soft but clear, with a strange mix of wonder and disbelief. "I always see you in my dreams." Ethan's heart skipped again. He stared at her, unsure of how to respond. His mouth went dry, and all he could manage was a weak, "What?" The woman smiled, a small but knowing smile. "It's you. Really is you. I've been searching for you." So the words she spoke didn't make sense. How could she have been dreaming about him? They had never met before, yet here she was, saying the same thing he had thought about her for so long. "Don't understand," Ethan said, still unable to fully comprehend the situation. "How do you know me?" The woman's gaze softened, and for a moment, she looked almost sad. "I've seen you in my dreams for as long as I can remember. Every night, I see you standing in that field, waiting for me. And now, I finally found you." Ethan's mind raced. The dream he had been having for so long wasn't just a figment of his imagination. It wasn't random. This woman had been seeing him just as he had been seeing her. Their connection was real, and he had no idea what it meant. "My name is Lyra," she continued. "I'm from the planet Viridia. Far from here. I came here because I had to find you." Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. His mind struggled to piece everything together, but one thing was certain. This wasn't a coincidence. The dreams, the connection, it all led to this moment. He tried to speak, but his words faltered. Why? Why me? What do you want with me? Lyra's eyes sparkled with a mixture of sadness and determination. I don't know yet, but I feel like you're part of something important, something that has to happen, something that involves both of us. The crowd around them was beginning to take notice, but Lyra seemed oblivious to the attention. She stepped even closer to Ethan, her gaze never leaving his. You're not just any human. There's more to you than you realize. And I think that's why we're connected. Ethan didn't know what to say. His mind was a blur of confusion, disbelief, and curiosity. This wasn't something he had ever imagined could happen. An alien woman, standing before him, telling him that they were connected through their dreams. It all sounded like something out of a science fiction novel. But there was one thing that Ethan couldn't ignore: the way his heart raced when he saw her, the strange familiarity that he felt. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this than he could understand. As Lyra reached out to gently touch his arm, he felt a strange warmth spread through him, as though they were both part of something much larger than just a chance meeting. Need your help, Ethan, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible above the noise of the station. We don't have much time. Ethan looked at her, still processing everything she had said. He didn't know what she needed or what was happening. But one thing was clear. His life had just changed forever, and the journey he was about to embark on was going to be far more complicated and dangerous than he could ever have imagined. Ethan had always prided himself on being a rational person. He was a technician, a problem solver, who dealt in facts and logic. But standing there, staring into Lyra's bright, otherworldly eyes, none of his usual reasoning seemed to matter anymore. This couldn't be real, could it? A dream? A hallucination? Or had his life really taken a turn into the unknown? No. Lyra stood before him, her presence both soothing and unsettling. Her delicate features, almost too perfect to be real, held a kind of wisdom and sorrow that Ethan couldn't fully grasp. There was something deeper about her, something beyond her appearance. Ethan felt as if he were seeing her not just with his eyes, but with his soul. I still don't understand, Ethan finally managed to say, his voice trembling slightly, though he couldn't explain why. How is this even possible? How can we both have these dreams? Lyra's lips parted as if she were about to explain, but then she paused, looking around them. Her gaze shifted from Ethan to the station's busy marketplace, where the hum of activity seemed distant and muffled. She lowered her voice, though it wasn't as if anyone could hear them over the station's chatter. I don't know the answer. Ethan, she said, her voice tinged with frustration, but I know what I feel. There's a reason why we're connected, why I've seen you in my dreams all these years, and now I've found you. It can't just be coincidence. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to process the impossible situation. Was she truly telling the truth? How could anyone believe something like this? But looking at her, the way she carried herself, so different from the aliens he'd encountered on the station, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward her. It was as though the universe had woven their paths together for a reason. I don't know what to say, Ethan confessed, his mind still spinning. I've never had a connection like this with anyone, let alone an alien. Lyra smiled softly, almost sadly. You're not just any human, Ethan. You're part of something much bigger than you think. Known this for a long time, but I only now realize the truth of it. Ethan's curiosity grew, but he couldn't shake the doubt that clung to his mind. What do you mean, part of something bigger? I can't explain it fully just yet, Lyra said, her gaze distant for a moment as if she were piecing together something important. But what I know is this. There are forces, dark forces, that have been watching us for years, and they know about our bond. That's why I came here. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Dark forces? The way Lyra spoke made it seem so real, so urgent. He wanted to push her for more answers, to understand the gravity of what she was saying. But he also realized that in order to get answers, he had to trust her. Dark forces, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper.
It's what kind of
forces? Lyra sighed, her eyes closing briefly as if the weight of her words were too much. When she opened them again, Ethan saw fear, their real fear. Not just for herself, but for him. 2. There are beings out there who can manipulate minds, steal thoughts, control dreams. I don't know who they are or what they want with us. But I do know they are after this connection between us. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. He'd heard stories of mind control, manipulation, and powerful alien entities. But they were always just stories, myths, and rumors shared over drinks or during idle chatter. Now, here was Lyra, standing before him, telling him that it was all true. That his connection to her was not just a strange coincidence, but something that others wanted to exploit. But why me? Why now? Ethan asked, his voice shaking slightly. I'm just an ordinary guy. I've got no special powers, no secret abilities. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes softening as she placed a gentle hand on his arm. Her touch was warm, comforting, but there was a seriousness in her gaze that made Ethan feel the weight of the situation. You may not think so, but you are. You have something within you, something that the others don't understand yet. It's why they've been watching. Us both. I believe you're part of a prophecy. Something that was written long ago, when the stars aligned, when the worlds were at their most vulnerable. And now you and I are caught in the middle of it. Ethan's mind was reeling. Prophecy. Couldn't even wrap his head around the fact that an alien was standing in front of him, speaking about their bond as if it were some cosmic fate. He had always thought of the universe as a random place, chaotic and unpredictable. But now, it seemed like everything was somehow connected. Like his life was suddenly part of something much bigger than he had ever imagined. But what about you? Ethan asked, his curiosity burning. What part do you play in all of this? Lyra's expression darkened. I don't know the full truth yet either. But I do know that I've been sent to find you. To help you understand what's happening, and to protect you from the dangers that are closing in. Before Ethan could respond, the sound of footsteps approached from behind it. The voice that followed was deep and unmistakable. Someone was watching them. Lyra stiffened, her body tensing as she looked past Ethan's shoulder. We need to go, she said quickly. They're already here. Ethan's heart raced as he turned, but there was no sign of any immediate threat. Still, he knew Lyra. WASNT, the Type 2 act on impulse. There was danger, real danger, and it was closing in on them. Who's coming? Ethan asked, his voice low. Lyra took his hand in hers, and without another word, she pulled him through the crowd, weaving. Between the bustling market stalls, her touch was firm, guiding him with purpose. Ethan didn't hesitate, following her through the crowded space station, sure of what was coming next, but certain that his life had just taken a dramatic turn. They reached a quiet corridor at the edge of the station. Lyra looked around, checking for any signs of pursuit before she let out a breath. We need to move quickly, she said. There's no time to explain everything right now. But trust me, Ethan. The moment you and I crossed paths, things changed, and it's only just beginning. Ethan nodded, though he had no idea what he was getting into. But one thing was clear: his life, his dreams, and this strange woman had already become entwined in a way he couldn't escape. And whatever was coming, he would face it head on, with Lyra by his side. The quiet corridor was a welcome break from the bustling marketplace, but the silence only heightened Ethan's unease. His mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle that was his life now. Lyra's words echoed in his head. There's no time to explain everything right now. He wanted answers, wanted to understand what was going on. But one thing was clear: he was already in danger. Lyra had led him through a maze of narrow hallways. Her pace quick but steady, she was focused, her eyes scanning their surroundings, with a vigilance that told Ethan they were being watched. Despite the chaos of the station, Lyra moved with an ease that made him believe she was used to being on the run. Who's after us? Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper, as if speaking louder would draw attention. Why are they looking for you? Lyra's gaze flickered toward him, and her expression hardened. I don't know exactly who they are, but I know they want to control the bond we share, We'll stop at nothing to make sure we don't figure out what it means. Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of fear. Control the bond. What bond? He had no idea what Lyra was talking about, but something told him that he was in deeper than he could have ever imagined. So, these dark forces you mentioned they're the ones who've been watching us? Ethan asked, trying to understand. What he was now a part of? Lyra's lips pressed into a tight line. Yes. They've been monitoring us for a long time. They don't want us to succeed, Ethan. They know that if we figure out the purpose of our connection, they'll lose whatever hold they have over us. And that's something they can't allow. Ethan swallowed hard. He could barely wrap his mind around the idea that there were beings out there powerful. Dark beings who wanted to control him, to manipulate his every thought. And all because of a strange connection he had with Lyra. Suddenly, Lyra stopped in her tracks, her body going rigid. Ethan, caught off guard, almost bumped into her. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. Ethan strained his ears, listening carefully. At first, there was nothing but the faint hum of the station's engines. But then, he heard footsteps, echoing in the distance. The sound was soft at first, then louder as it grew closer. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she quickly pulled him behind a metal pillar, motioning for him to be silent. The footsteps grew louder, now accompanied by hushed voices. They were getting closer, and it was clear they were searching for someone. Ethan's heart raced as he pressed himself against the cold metal, his breathing shallow. He could feel the tension in the air, the uncertainty of what was coming. "We have to get out of here," Lyra whispered urgently, her grip tightening around his wrist. Now, without another word, she pulled Ethan down another hallway, her speed quickening. Ethan followed as best as he could, his mind still spinning with questions. Who were these people chasing them? What did they want? And why was he caught up in the middle of all of it? They rounded a corner and came to a small maintenance door. Lyra quickly typed in a code, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. She ushered Ethan inside, closing the door behind them just as the footsteps passed by the hallway. Ethan's heart was still pounding, but they were safe at least for now. "What was that?" he asked, his voice hoarse from the adrenaline pumping through him. Lyra's face was serious. "That was one of their search teams. They're relentless. They're getting closer. We don't have much time." Ethan looked at her, confusion still clouding his mind. "What exactly do they want from us? Why are they hunting you?" "Don't know everything," Lyra said, her voice filled with frustration. "But I know this. We have something they need. And if they get their hands on us, everything could change. The connection we share, the bond, it's not just about us. It's about something bigger. Something that could alter the balance of power in this entire galaxy." Ethan felt a chill run through him at her words. It was hard to grasp the magnitude of what she was saying. What was this bond they shared, and why was it so important? "Lyra, please," he said, his voice trembling. "You have to tell me more." "I don't understand any of this," she sighed, her expression softening. "I wish I could explain everything right now, Ethan, but we don't have the luxury of time. I'll tell you what I know, but you have to trust me. You have to stay by my side no matter what happens." Ethan nodded, his resolve hardening. He didn't fully understand what was going on, but one thing was clear. Lyra needed him. And he wasn't going to turn his back on her. "Not now. I trust you," he said, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. "Just tell me what to do." Lyra gave him a small, grateful smile. "Good. We need to get to the control room. It's the only place we'll be able to hide and figure out our next move." "Lead the way," Ethan replied, his heart still racing. He had no idea what the control room held or what they would find there, but he was ready to follow her. They had to figure this out. They moved quickly, staying in the shadows of the station's maze-like halls, trying to avoid detection. Every corner they turned seemed to bring them closer to danger. The sound of distant footsteps echoed, growing louder as they drew nearer to the control room. Lyra kept her head down, her movements swift and calculated. Ethan tried to match her pace, but his mind kept wandering back to the dark forces she had mentioned. Who were they? What did they want with him as they reached the control room door? Lyra paused, her hand hovering over the keypad. She looked at Ethan, her face hard with determination. "We're not alone in there," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But we have no choice. We need to get inside. Now." "Wait." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the decision hanging over them. There was no turning back. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same again. Lyra typed in the code, and the door slid open, revealing the dimly lit control room. Inside, several figures were gathered around a console, their backs turned to the door. But as soon as Lyra and Ethan entered, they spun around, their eyes narrowing with suspicion. The room fell silent. The figures didn't move, but it was clear that the moment they had been waiting for had finally arrived. The control room was cold, its dim lights casting long shadows across the walls. Ethan's heart raced as he stepped further inside, the door sliding shut behind him with a soft hiss. The tension in the air was palpable, and he could feel the eyes of the figures inside the room on him and Lyra. There were 4 of them, Melian figures with stern faces and dark uniforms that spoke of authority. They didn't seem like the kind of people you could trust. Lyra stepped forward, her posture straight and unyielding. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm but commanding. Ethan stood a few steps behind her, trying to remain composed. He wasn't sure if he was ready for whatever was coming next, but he had no choice but to follow her lead. One of the figures, a tall alien with silver-gray skin and piercing yellow eyes, narrowed his gaze at Lyra. "We thought you were already gone," he said, his voice low and filled with suspicion. "Why are you back, and who is this human with you?" Lyra didn't flinch. "He's with me, and I'm not leaving until I get some answers." The alien's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Lyra. "Answers? You know that's impossible. You were clear. There are forces beyond your understanding at play here." "I understand enough," Lyra said, stepping closer to the console. "Where the figures had been working? I know that I'm not just a pawn in someone's game. And neither is Ethan." Ethan was still trying to make sense of what was happening. These aliens, who were they? What were they doing here? Why did they seem so intent on controlling Lyra's every move? "You need to tell me everything," Lyra continued, her voice steady. "I've been searching for answers my entire life. Now that I've found them, I won't let anyone stand in my way." The alien with the yellow eyes stepped forward. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Lyra. You're playing with forces you can't control." His voice was colder now, more threatening. "Do you really think you can stop them?" Lyra's expression remained unchanged. "I don't need to stop them alone. I have help now. I will do whatever it takes to protect this connection." Ethan was still lost in the confusion of it all, but the look in Lyra's eyes told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just about her anymore. He was part of something bigger, something that neither of them fully understood. But he wasn't going to back down. He had come this far, wasn't going to leave now. The alien with yellow eyes scoffed. "You think the human can help? He's just like all the others. He won't be able to protect you." Ethan's temper flared, but before he could respond, Lyra held up her hand, silencing him. "Enough," she said firmly. "If you want to continue with your threats, you're free to try. But I came here for the truth. If you have any, I suggest you start talking." The other aliens in the room shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. It was clear that they were trying to decide what to do next. But the leader, the alien with yellow eyes, seemed unwilling to back down. "You don't understand the stakes here," the alien leader said, his voice softening slightly. "This bond you to share, it's not just a simple connection. Something far more powerful. Something that the galaxy has feared for centuries." Ethan felt his pulse quicken at his words. "What do you mean? What bond?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra stepped closer to him, her gaze never leaving the alien leader. "Tell him. He deserves to know, Al." The alien leader hesitated for a moment, his expression darkening. "It's a bond that could reshape the future of the galaxy. You, Ethan, are not just a random human. You're part of an ancient prophecy, one that was set into motion long before you were born." Ethan blinked, stunned by the weight of the words of prophecy. But he was just a normal guy. He'd never heard of any prophecy, let alone one involving him. The idea seemed impossible. Lyra nodded, confirming the alien leader's words. It's true. We've been searching for you, Ethan. You were always meant to be part of this. But why? Ethan asked, his voice tinged with confusion and disbelief. What's so special about me? The alien leader's expression turned serious. You're part of a lineage, a line that's been lost to history, a line that can alter the balance of power across the stars. This connection between you and Lyra is the key. It's a bond that can unlock unimaginable power, something that can either save the galaxy or destroy it. Ethan felt his stomach churn. He had never asked for any of this. He had never asked to be part of some prophecy or to be caught in the middle of a galactic struggle. He was just trying to get by, to live a normal life. But now, everything had changed. Lyra, sensing his confusion, placed a hand on his shoulder. I know this is a lot to take in, she said softly, but the truth is, you're more important than you think. We can't let these forces control us. We need to stop them before it's too late. The alien leader scoffed. You really think you can stop them? You have no idea who you're dealing with. The forces behind this, behind you and Lyra, older than your species, you can't fight them. Lyra stood taller, her eyes blazing with determination. We don't need to fight them alone, but we have to start somewhere, and we have to take the first step. Ethan wasn't sure what that first step would look like, but he was starting to understand the gravity of the situation. Lyra was right. He couldn't sit back and do nothing. Whatever this bond was, whatever these forces were, he was part of it now. And he wasn't going to let it all be decided without a fight. The alien leader took a step back, his expression one of reluctant respect. You think you can win? Very well. I know this. You're not the only one searching for answers. Lyra's gaze never wavered. Then we'll make sure we find the truth before anyone else does. Ethan swallowed hard. The weight of the situation was pressing down on him, but one thing was clear. He couldn't walk away now. He was in this, for better or worse. And whatever happened next, he was going to face it head on. The tension in the control room was unbearable. The alien leader's words echoed in Ethan's mind, and the weight of the prophecy seemed heavier than ever. He had been thrust into something he didn't understand, but now, standing here with Lyra, he knew there was no turning back. Whatever these dark forces were, whatever their intentions, he had to face them. And he wasn't alone. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes filled with determination. We can do this, she said, her voice steady. We have to. Ethan nodded, though his mind was still reeling from the revelation. He had always considered himself an ordinary person, quiet, unnoticed technician on a space station. But now he was part of something much bigger, the connection with Lyra. The prophesied all pointed to one thing. They had to stop the dark forces that were after them. They had to fight. Lyra turned to the group of aliens in the control room, who were still watching them intently. You've all heard the truth, she said. Now, we need your help. We need to stop these forces before they can control us, before they can destroy everything. The alien leader, the one with the yellow eyes, crossed his arms over his chest, a look of skepticism on his face. You think you can stop them? Do you even know what they're capable of? I know enough, Lyra replied, and I know we can't let them win. Not again. The alien leader seemed to consider this for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fine, we'll help you, but we do this on our terms. Ethan wasn't sure what to make of the situation, but he didn't have the luxury of questioning it. They needed help, and these aliens, whoever they were, seemed to be the only ones who could provide it. He glanced at Lyra, who gave him a reassuring look. We'll make it work, she said quietly, her gaze never leaving the alien leader. The group of aliens moved quickly, organizing themselves around the control room. Lyra and Ethan were shown to a console at the far end of the room, where several screens flickered with data. It seemed like the control room was a command center for the station, a place where decisions were made, and information flowed in and out from all corners of the galaxy. We're tracking their movements, one of the aliens said as he manipulated a console, his fingers moving swiftly across the touchpad. They've already begun their search. They'll be here soon. Then we have no time to waste, Lyra said, her voice calm, but filled with urgency. We need to be ready. Ethan watched as the group of aliens worked together, sharing information and strategizing. Despite their initial hesitation, they were moving with purpose now. Felt like they were finally starting to take control of the situation. But in the back of Ethan's mind, doubt lingered. Could they really defeat these forces? Could he, an ordinary human, really stand against whatever they were up against? Lyra caught his gaze and gave him a small, encouraging smile. "You're not alone in this," she said softly. "We can do this together." Her words gave him a sense of strength, a reminder that he wasn't alone, wasn't just a pawn. In some grand cosmic game, he had a role to play, and Lyra was here fighting alongside him. As the minutes passed, the room grew more tense. The aliens had tracked the dark forces to a nearby sector, but the forces were closing in fast. They had no more time to prepare. The final battle was about to begin. "We've done all we can," the alien leader said, his voice gravely serious. "Now, it's time to face them." Lyra nodded, her eyes hardening with resolve. "Let's do this." The control room's lights flickered, and the sound of the station's engines hummed louder in the background. The countdown to the final confrontation had begun. Ethan's heart raced as he followed Lyra and the aliens toward the station's main airlock. The battle would take place outside in the cold vacuum of space, where their enemies would have the upper hand. As they reached the airlock, the door slid open, revealing the vast expanse of space. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he looked out at the stars. But it wasn't the stars that caught his attention, it was the fleet of ships in the distance. Dark, menacing ships that seemed to block out the light, their shapes twisted and unnatural. "They're here," one of the aliens said quietly. His voice filled with dread. Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes steady and filled with determination. "We can do this. We have to stop them." The alien leader spoke again, his voice commanding. "Everyone, prepare yourselves. We fight together. We either stop them now or we lose everything." Ethan's hands shook, but he forced himself to steady his breathing. He was ready to fight for something bigger than himself, ready to stand by Lyra, ready to protect the future of the galaxy. As the alien ships moved closer, the control room systems blinked with activity. The alien leader activated the station's defenses, and Ethan felt the entire station shudder as weapons powered up. But it wasn't just the station's guns that worried him. It was the power of the bond he shared with Lyra. It was the power that these dark forces were after. It was something more than just technology. It was something they couldn't control. The dark ships moved in, their engines glowing as they neared the station. Ethan felt the tension building, his heart pounding in his chest. It was now or never. The future of the galaxy depended on this moment. "Let's do this," Lyra said, her voice filled with strength. The battle began with a deafening roar as the station's weapons fired. The ships clashing in a storm of energy and light. Ethan watched in awe as Lyra moved, her alien abilities guiding her every move.
Ow.
She was a force to be reckoned with, and together with the aliens by their side, they fought back. Ethan was caught in the chaos, his mind racing, but he knew one thing: he had to keep fighting. They had come too far to stop now. As long as he stood with Lyra, they could face anything. The battle in space was fierce. Ethan stood at the controls, his hands gripping the cold metal of the console. His eyes were fixed on the view screen in front of him, where the massive dark ships swarmed around the station like a storm of shadows. The sound of explosions echoed through the station, shaking the walls as weapons fired, sending streaks of energy into the void. The sky above the station was a chaotic mix of fire, light, and destruction. Lyra stood beside him, her face calm and focused, her eyes locked onto the screen. Her presence was a constant, reassuring force beside him, but even she couldn't hide the tension in her expression. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy, and everything hung in the balance. "There." Pushing back, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the chaos. She was using her abilities to guide the station's weapons, mind synchronizing with the ship's systems, turning them into an unstoppable force. "But we have to do more." "We need to break their hold on the station," Ethan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea what they were up against. The dark ships had advanced technology, weapons far beyond what the station was capable of. But they also had something the enemy didn't understand: their bond. The connection between him and Lyra was growing stronger. Every moment spent fighting together, every moment spent near her, felt like they were becoming more in tune with each other. He could feel her thoughts, her emotions, and her resolve as if they were his own. And that bond, whatever it was the key to defeating these forces. "They're not going to give up," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if we can't stop them?" Lyra's eyes softened for a moment as she looked at him. There was something comforting in the way she spoke next, as if she had always known the answer. Right. Even before the question had been asked. "We will stop them," she said with quiet confidence. "We have to. There's no other choice." The enemy ships were closing in, their weapons flashing with deadly precision. One by one, the station's defensive shields flickered and died, each impact sending another shockwave through the station. Ethan felt the tremor in his bones as the walls shook. The hum of the station's engines now a distant roar. Lyra stepped forward, her voice commanding as she spoke into the comm system. "All units fall back to the central core. We need to regroup and push them out of our space. Now." Her words echoed through the station, and Ethan could feel the aliens who had joined the fight moving with purpose. It was clear they weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for something much greater than themselves. "We need to do something drastic," Lyra said, turning back to him. "They're going to keep coming. If we don't find a way to cut them off, we'll lose everything." Ethan thought for a moment. He wasn't a strategist. He wasn't a soldier. But he had been a technician for years, trained to fix things when they broke, to find solutions when problems seemed insurmountable. And right now the station was broken, and the only way to save it was to think differently. "We need to shut down their communication," he said, his voice sharp with sudden clarity. "If we can block their ability to coordinate, they'll be lost. We can fight them off one by one." Lyra's eyes brightened as she understood. "Yes," she said, her voice full of hope. "That's the key. We'll sever their communication, then deal with the rest." Ethan immediately began typing on the console, his fingers flying over the keys as he accessed the station's central communication systems. The dark ships relied on their coordinated strikes to overwhelm their opponents. If they could sever that link, the enemy would be blind, disorganized, and vulnerable. "Can you help me set the jammer?" Ethan asked Lyra, his eyes focused on the screen as the countdown for another barrage of enemy fire appeared. He didn't have much time. Lyra stepped closer, her hand hovering over his, her energy crackling in the air between them. "I can do better than that," she said with a small smile.
"I'll amplify it."
Without further explanation, she placed her palm on the console, and for a moment, Ethan felt a surge of energy flow through him. It was as if the power of the station itself was syncing with the connection between them. Lyra's abilities rippled outward, and Ethan watched as the system came to life in a way it never had before. "Done," she said with a soft exhale, stepping back. "Now it's up to you." Ethan hesitated for just a moment, then pressed the final button. The station's communication network surged with a pulse of energy. The dark ship's systems flickered, their coordination momentarily disrupted. The enemy ships scattered, disoriented, their weapons turning aimlessly, no longer targeting the station with precision. The tide of battle shifted. Ethan's breath caught in his chest as he watched the change unfold before him. The once organized enemy ships were now moving unpredictably, their attacks growing weaker. They were still dangerous, but without the ability to coordinate. They were no longer the unstoppable force they once were. "This is our chance," Lyra said, her voice full of urgency. "We need to take them down now." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding as he watched the battle unfold. The station's weapon systems were now firing with deadly accuracy, picking off one ship at a time. The enemy had no defense against the relentless fire from all sides. "We're doing it," Ethan said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We're actually doing it." Lyra turned to him, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of pride and relief. "We are. Together." The last of the enemy ships fell, disappearing in a flash of light as the station's weapons tore through their holes. The control room was silent for a moment, the chaos of battle fading away, leaving only the hum of the station's engines and the soft sound of Ethan's breathing. "We did it," he whispered, not quite believing it. Lyra smiled, her expression soft but full of satisfaction. "We did, and the galaxy is safe for now." Ethan looked out at the stars through the station's windows, the weight of everything finally settling on him. They had won, but the journey wasn't over. This was only the beginning. He and Lyra had come together through a strange bond, and together they had defeated an unimaginable threat. But there were still questions. There was still so much they didn't understand. "What happens now?" Ethan asked, turning to Lyra. Lyra's gaze was steady as she looked at him. "Now we find out the truth. We explore this connection, this bond, and we prepare for whatever comes next." As they stood together, the stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter. The future was uncertain, but with Lyra by his side, Ethan knew one thing for sure. He was ready to face it. Together.